Well, good morning, dear listener. It's almost noon now, but anyway, it was good to have you and the other fellas. Well, and it's even better to have Pat McGart. How are you this morning, Pat? How do you find yourself? This is the first time I've seen you in 2025, you know.
That's true. Yeah,
We can't
it's
st
a totally different year. Actually, dude, like around here last night, the roads were like bottles, but it actually thawed very quick this morning.
Yeah, that's right.
Yesterday morning, you would have needed a shovel to get the ice off the car window.
Uh,
It's really that thick. But today, it's and now they're warning. I'm not sure whether it's going to be this sort of part of Donegal or the north's going to get it, but they're warning of significant snowfall. So I don't know.
well, the sky looked like it's going to have snow here, but it's cleared up now and the sun's shining. Looks lovely, in
Yeah.
fact. Okay, that's our weather report. Let's go on to our political. Well, I don't know if you call this political or not. You were talking about, or you thought we might have a word or two about the honours list. Well, first
No,
of all, Pat,
no,
Pat,
no,
Pat, Pat, were you on it this year?
no, 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 no. But
Oh, what's the point?
let me I read this piece by this fella, a former lecturer at the University of Ulster, a guy called Dr. Jude Collins, on of all people, Hugo Duncan. So over to you, Dr. Collins.
Well,
Ah,
I'll tell you. I kind of like Hugo, and I know he's wildly popular. I mean, he's been doing that spin a disc thing in the afternoon for ages. There was a time, when George, what's his name? What do you remember that guy,
George
George?
Jones.
George
George Jones.
Jones. George Jones used to be the sort of unionist slash loyalist slash Protestant equivalent of Hugo, but Hugo has eclipsed him completely. So he is a hugely successful spinner of discs. To talk to him, he's a very cheery, chappy. I have to say two things though. I hate to be sort of condescending. One is that I don't think that that whole program of Hugo's is the kind of thing that should dominate the airwaves on the afternoon. I just think it's too easy. It's too easy and it's too cozy. And I just feel there should be a wee bit more intellectual fiber. But then I'm a nerd. The second thing, and far more important than that, is Hugo has received an MBE and he is very, very delighted. Now, I simply do not believe in New Year's honours from the British sovereign. And it doesn't matter who it is. And I know there are lots of people who disagree with me, lots of people who are nationalists who would grab at it. A sister of my own, my late sister, said, "Oh God, I would surely, if they made me a dame, I'd be in there like a flash." I wouldn't be in either as a dame or a lord or a sir or an MBE or an OBE, a member of the British Empire. And Hugo says he's delighted for his mother's sake. What do you think? Was it
Dude,
too
yeah, I remember,
strong?
I'm doing a bit of name dropping here, but I
Hmm.
was out at dinner one time a long time ago, and the late Brian Friel, remember Brian?
Oh,
Isn't he a
yeah.
brother? No, yeah, right,
I
Brian
always
Friel.
connection. Aye.
Your connection, right? I was sitting at the dinner and whatever else, and I remember there was an American woman there. I will not say who she was,
Hmm.
and she said about somebody in the Catholic community being given an British honor, like maybe made a dame or someone.
Yeah.
I can't remember who it was. Might have been somebody in the SDLP.
Hmm.
And anyway, at the time, there was the troubles were hot and heavy. I remember Brent Field came out with a great line. This American lady asked, "Why is there such opposition to in the nationalist community for people accepting British honours?"
Hmm.
And he says it's like a corral. What the British do, he says, they rope somebody and pull them out and say, "Well, look, we're not that bad. Look, there's Jude Collins accepted a knighthood,
Hmm.
or there's Pat McGarty accepted a member of the British Empire. So what's your problem?" So he says it's almost like when they pull a person out and they're sort of saying it's weakening the group, it's weakening the sort of the cohort of people. And he says it's sort of, you know, there's another sort of, what would you say? I don't know what's the right word. Remember what is the Norwegians
Useful
had them a
idiot.
name for huh?
A useful idiot.
A useful idiot, yeah. Uh, in other words, it's a sort of castle Catholic mentality, and
Hmm.
that weakens the spirit of the group, and
Hmm.
that's what the Brits have done. For years, they put their arm around the shoulder and have a gin and tonic at my clubs, or that sort of bollocks, and it's all part of this system, to sort of say we are a superior race and come join our club.
Yeah. Well, you see, I think it goes
By the way,
beyond.
the Norwegian word I couldn't remember 2 seconds ago, quisling.
Quisling, very good. That's it. Where it used to be much more current than it is now. Quisling,
Yeah.
we all know what a Quisling is. I maybe we're being a bit too hard on Hugo, but
No, we're not. I'm not having a go at Hugo. Hugo comes across as a very nice man. I'm not having a
aye,
go at Hugo.
but it's just the whole system that he is weighed
Yeah, it's
into.
a system I'm having a go at, not Hugo.
Aye, aye. Well, Hugo's part of it if he's become a member of the British Empire.
Yeah, yeah.
I actually think it goes beyond here. I mean, they use it very cunningly here. There's an awful lot of women, for example, who are principals in Catholic schools, especially secondary schools, about Derry, who
Yeah.
have become OBEs and MBEs down the year. And of course, like my sister, they have clasped it to their bosom and said, "You, I've
Yeah.
got an MBE, I've got an OBE." I think it's not simply the Irish that they use these baubles with. They use it with any number of people. They use it with their own people. You know, it's to
Hmm.
keep the working class content, toss them this little shiny thing they can sort of nurse and nestle with. Um, I don't know. I suppose it's
You
supporting
know what it is, Jude?
the
It's like like a shiny. Like the lighters when when they used to go to the African villages and put on a lighter. It's you can be you can I remember how sort of derogatory that was, but this sort of thing. You peasants, you can come up and join us, and then invite one or two up, so that the rest can aspire to be like that. But it's obviously the establishment's going to keep control.
Yeah, I quoted Benjamin Zephaniah in my
Aye, yeah, I saw
blog,
that.
and
Yeah.
I thought
Yeah.
his response was really good. What me, Mr. Blair? What me, Mrs. Queen? And up yours, Mr. Blair, etc.
Remember
Do you,
by the way, sorry for but remember the late great Eddie McAteer, who was the
yeah.
leader of the Nationalist Party.
Hmm.
Apparently, somebody landed at his door one day. Some sort of guy from the one of the British civil servants landed and says, "I have been ordered to hand deliver this." They were offering him something like a knighthood to Eddie McAteer and something, and he says, "On behalf of the British Empire," and Eddie apparently sits here, man, what empire?
Yeah, yeah.
So
It's like something is hollowed out. Well, the trouble is, when there was an empire, it was an empire. It was a bloody and uh,
ah,
conquering force in the world, just as
mm,
America is today. So, anyway, final question before we leave this, Pat. Do you think, what is your opinion of Hugo in terms of accepting that?
uh, look, you said something earlier on, and I'm trying to be very careful. As it, Hugo's program to me, put it like this, I don't get it at all. And it's sort of you said it's not the world's most intellectual program. I think I'll leave it at that answer. I'll answer it that way.
Okay, okay. Well, in ways I like Hugo, but I wish to God I hadn't taken that. It's a bad example, as my mother would say, giving bad example to others. Okay, let's move on to something even worse than, oh, should I say that? Even worse than Hugo's MBE. And that was the shooting in New Orleans. Did the guy kill something like 10 or 15 people? Is that the one?
15 people, Jude. Yeah.
Jeez, that's desperate. And you're saying it's becoming something of a regular occurrence.
No, Jude, and what I'm saying then there was the thing outside that the Trump Hotel. No,
Yeah,
Jude, what I've said it a couple of times. The old thing it says in the Bible, and it's been true in history, and you reap what you sow.
yeah.
And what I see happening now in Gaza and Lebanon and Syria and all the rest, and you can see America's evil hand behind most of it itself in Israel. I think in years to come, and I genuinely believe this, that we are going to pay a hell of a price. The hatred that has now been generated in the Arab world, and right, by the way, of the hypocrisy of the West. I think even if it's not organized, there are going to be individual acts. Guys driving down with trucks in the middle of Paris, the middle of Madrid, hardly Madrid now. I think because the Spanish have been quite sympathetic. But Britain, bombs going off.
Hmm.
Some wee girls at a concert, somewhere with Taylor Swift in Chicago or somewhere. I that's my prediction. I am saying you always pay a price for what we're doing now.
Well, Pat, these mass shootings and individual shootings, going back to say Kennedy, Those are
Yeah.
going long before Gaza became a central issue or went as mad as it's gone now.
No, but I'm not talking just about America, Jude. Like mass shootings in America are commonplace, but I'm talking about across now, across the Western world. I think we're going to, Gaza is going to be an instigator or a catalyst for a
Uh,
worldwide sort of terror
yeah,
campaign, if
yeah.
that's the word you want to use. Yeah,
Could be indeed. I was one of the things I'd written down here was that you'll keep getting these killings, mass killings, even as long as they make guns available. But then, of
yeah,
course, these guys killed not simply with guns. He killed most people with a truck he was
yeah.
driving.
Well,
But
Jude, the guy in Paris a couple of years ago just got a truck and drove down the center of
uh,
you know,
oh,
you don't you know, you can steal a vehicle.
But here is an interesting thing. This, I think they should. I mean, I think the way guns are owned in the States is crazy. But during the Troubles, they do say, now I haven't got figures to verify this, but they do say that there was a high suicide rate among security forces, quotation marks, during the
Yeah,
Troubles. And I know people who put that down to the fact that, of course, their lives, those people who were police or were soldiers, it was a pretty stressful job, even no matter what political views they had. And when they
yeah,
would feel dark or in a bad mood, the gun was available. The gun
yeah,
was available. If you've got the means available to kill yourself, you're gonna,
yeah.
and you get feel depressed enough, then it's not.
You just say one bullet and this is
That's
all
right.
over.
Yeah, that's right. And the other thing is, these two, was it both of these guys or just one of them, were former soldiers in Iraq or places like that?
I, they're both of them are army veterans. One, I think, had 16 years. I think the other might have had 8. But the thing about it, Jude, are these like they're saying there's no known connection, but this thought strikes you. One had Elon Musk's cars. The other had a Trump hotel. Both of them are former army veterans. The attacks were on basically the same within the same time frame, and yet the Americans are saying they're not linked. And I'm going,
Well, I don't know. It is possible now, that he just happened to find that the
yeah,
truck he rented or whatever was a Tesla. Actually, Tesla is very interesting. The attitudes to Tesla. My son in
yeah,
London has got a Tesla and he's tormented now. He was as proud
yeah.
as anything of it, and then he realized that Elon Musk was Trump's best buddy, and he can't wait to get shot of it. He just
Uh,
any association with Musk, and I can understand everything about it.
Put it this, Jude, I was on Twitter, and when Trump and that clown Musk got together, I
Yeah.
left Twitter. I said I'm not going to be associated with it.
Well, I was
It's
going to.
my only protest.
I have moved. Well, I've opened an account, as it were, on what's that one? What is it?
Blue sky,
Blue skies.
blue
But
sky. Yeah.
it doesn't seem to work with the same kind of urgency at all.
No, no, it
I
doesn't.
was
No.
I was tempted to close my account on Twitter as well, just like you. But then I thought maybe I'm putting off my nose to spite my face because it is a good way to help get out our broadcasts, for example.
No, no, but hey, Jude, I accept the point, and a lot of people are, but Jude, there's algorithms, and without question, in the last 2 or 3 weeks, the algorithms were Trump, 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 Trump. Like, and I have no doubt whatsoever, Twitter was absolutely, what would you say, spun in favor of Trump.
Oh yeah, of course, of course.
Well, so
Uh,
why do you want to be part of that?
well, that's true. That's true, Pat.
Yeah,
You're pricking my conscience now. You know, of
yeah,
course, that he doubled or something his income through his
yeah, yeah,
association with Trump in recent months.
yeah.
Jeff Bezos and him, right, were roughly equal in terms of who is the richest man in the world. They both had around $200 billion.
Yeah.
Musk now has $420 billion.
$1 billion. Yeah.
Can you imagine? I mean, it's sort of
Yeah.
so shameful. And Trump's all set, to give tax breaks to guys like that. That that's
Yeah. Mm.
that's not good. That's not good. Okay, let's get a wee bit more local, Pat, in terms of this question of people being killed. And I find my heart aches when I raise this subject. The family of Sean Brown, the
Mm.
GAA official who was murdered by a group of loyalists who beat him, brought him in a truck from Balahi to Randallstown or somewhere around there, and then shot him dead.
Yeah.
And he had six children. He had six, I guess, pretty young children. Anyway, the family were delighted. I don't know why, but anyway, they were delighted when they heard they were going to get a public inquiry into this killing.
Mm.
And now Hilary Benn, the Secretary of State for Northern Ireland, has said that he will challenge that decision in the High Court. I really felt let down. I always thought Hilary Benn would have something of his father, Tony Benn, in
Mm.
him. And, I always thought of him
Mm.
as sort of a decent spud. But the idea that he would challenge something that the family want, the poor family that have suffered all these years. I mean, I never met Sean Brown, but the very thought of what happened to him, trying to lock up the clubhouse, going out, and these guys attacking him trying to fight
Yeah.
back. And then the other thing is, between Balahi and Randallstown, somebody pointed out, there must have been any number of closed circuit television cameras, security cameras. But apparently none of them, they claim, were working. Now,
Yeah.
if that's true, that really does suggest collusion to me.
Dude, Sean Brown's wife is 87. She's been waiting, what, 30 years almost for this, right? The judge at the granting he says the evidence that there should be a public inquiry was overwhelming. He said it was an open and shut case.
Yeah,
He says on the basis of the legislation that was before him. I think he used the word overwhelming reasons for it to go public
yeah,
because it was a matter of public interest. Even Jude, all along, was there collusion? How much did the British Army and how many loyalists were involved? Why? How come the cameras all the way? No, nobody seemed to see anything, know anything, or all the rest of it. That suddenly they switch off the cameras. All these sort of things, Jude, and so on. And Hilary Benn announces an appeal against that judgment on New Year's Eve. Like the old one,
yeah.
very bad news. Remember, what
Aye,
was it?
aye.
Princess
Yeah, this is a very
Margaret's
good day. It's very bad news.
Princess Margaret's divorce was announced on the day of the FA Cup final type thing. Remember when the FA Cup final was the biggest thing going? So, Jude, but here's the thing, Jude. Why should we be surprised? I'd have yet to meet a British politician, Jude, that doesn't act in the interests of the establishment. And it doesn't matter whether you're Labour and all the rest. In fact, sometimes Labour, remember Roy Mason, who was disgusting wee shit,
Mhm,
and he was Labour. He loved running around with Lord this and Lord that, and, hunting and shooting and all this sort of stuff.
mhm,
But
mhm.
anyway, that's aside. Hilary Benn might be the son of Tony Benn, but he's a very much an establishment figure. And they're all going to play the game
Yeah,
on Britain's behalf, justice and human rights and all the rest. They
mm.
pay lip service to that shit. Bollocks. They look after each other first.
The only bright side I can see to this is it might jerk some people who are beginning to think, well, Brits are not bad. Look, they're giving us an inquiry and so on, and terrible things happen. But look, they're trying to clear it up. It'll disabuse those people of any such notion of fairness. They'll realize
Uh,
that even
it
the
comes
best,
into my head. Remember, Ben Lowry of the newsletter said
yeah,
all this stuff is sort of weighted in favour of the nationalist community and such and such. But here's the point, Jude. Ben leaves out of his equation every time is quite literally somewhere in the region of 10,000 people from the nationalist Republican community went through the court system, were jailed, etc., during the 30 years of the Troubles. About five British soldiers, despite the fact that I think and RUC people and all the rest, despite being involved in many, many incidents, including murders, hundreds of them actually, only about four or five British soldiers ever served time. Most were released way, way early, and most were allowed to rejoin their regiments.
and some of them got
RUC
promotion.
and UDR personnel were up to their eyeballs in sectarian actions. Very
Mm.
few of them faced any sanction for it. So this sort of, the historic inquiries and all this are weighted against soldiers and former RUC. It's absolute bollocks.
I,
It's redressing the imbalance.
I think, Pat, that's the problem. You see, these people see things looking like they're coming back somewhat in the direction of redressing the imbalance, as you say, and that to them is a loss, serious loss, because
Yeah.
the whole creation of the state was to give them that slightly superior status to their neighbours who are Catholics or national.
Jude, you mentioned as a possible talk. Dermot Ferriter, a very good article on about and it knows about Sinn Féin. Maybe there were more pressing matters in the south. Mary Lou McDonald accepts that civic society in the south has more pressing matters than maybe Irish unity,
Mm,
more so than she would like. But
yeah.
the whole thing. See the Northern State when it was set up, basically, without question, it was set up in such a way that it was total hegemonic unionism. They would rule forevermore, amen. And and remember the famous one when Alan Wicker went to see Jerry Glover, the mayor of Derry, where 75% of the people were ruled by the 25%.
Uh,
Wicker said to him, there's a total denial of democracy here. And Glover said, he who pays the piper calls the tune. That sort of mentality.
Yeah, yeah. That is a very interesting article actually by Dermot Ferriter in today's Irish Times. He's very weighing very heavily on the notion of the Boundary Commission, the 100th
Yeah,
anniversary of the Boundary Commission, and
yeah,
he points out that nationalists were very disappointed by it, and Craig, who had said not an inch, was vindicated, and sure enough,
yeah.
they set the boundaries to suit though the
Well, what is
union.
they sent? They sent Owen McNeill, who apparently was the village idiot, up to negotiate. He was totally the wrong guy.
Uh, there was a guy from Oma. I haven't quite established who the Dermot Ferrer does mention him, but there was a guy from Oma, my hometown, involved in the Free States negotiating
Civil
table.
service.
Uh,
Uh,
anyway, I found that article very interesting from 2 points, Pat. I'm sure you know that the guy who writes the article doesn't necessarily, and in my experience, rarely writes the headline as well.
yeah,
And the headline to Dermot Ferder's article is sobering reality for Sinn Féin is that many voters don't share its focus on unity. I thought that was a very loaded headline. It was
yeah,
sobering reality. In other words, it had come as a shock. It'd sober them up if they were thinking that the voters were focused on unity. I, I, I'm not a Sinn Féin member, but I certainly resent that. Uh,
uh,
it's suggesting, that you weren't aware that most people in the South aren't focused on Irish unity. For God's sake, in the election, Mary Lou McDonald never mentioned it, scarcely. So
no,
to suggest that they're silly, out of touch
yeah,
political
yeah.
party is, for the birds.
That reminds me. There's a controversy, a massive controversy now going on in the BBC about the coverage of Gaza. And apparently, I can't remember his first name, but apparently the point man for coverage of Gaza is a fellow called Berg, and
Mhm.
he was apparently, according to Owen Jones in a major article, maybe Berg's going to sue them and all the rest, but it claimed that apparently this is fact. He previously worked for the CIA. He is a Israeli. His background or a pro-Israeli anyway. I think he might be Jewish and so on. But anyway, bottom line is apparently after the Amnesty International report about human rights abuses and war crimes,
Mhm.
uh, the BBC, rather than report straight, waited about 24 hours so the impact would go on their social media, and it says Israel rejects fabricated quoted Amnesty report.
Too.
So, Jude, did the headline reflect what Amnesty said?
Yeah, yeah. Well, of course, all the time, like you're told, I've mentioned this before, the BBC forever, if there's any statistic about the number of people killed in Gaza, they'll say the Hamas-controlled government source says so.
They don't say the Israeli controlled
Aye,
propaganda machine,
aye,
Hasbara, claiming that every time there's a hospital, it's a
yeah,
command center. Jude,
yeah.
they have yet to produce a single iota of proof
Mm.
where the fuck this command center was.
Yeah. Let's come back for a minute, Pat, to that David Ferd. I just find it really interesting. That headline,
Yeah,
as I
go
say,
ahead.
I think is a misleading one. I really do, and I believe it's a deliberately misleading one. However, in the course of the article, towards the end of the article, Ferder says that Sinn Féin has yet to be, or people have yet to be fully engaged with this issue. That is to say, reunification. He's dead right, and I'm sure he's probably realizes this. Of course, people aren't fully focused or fully engaged with this issue because the issue hasn't been fleshed out. What they're faced with,
Absolutely.
what a united Ireland would look like, etc., etc. I think that's on its way. So I suspect that Dermot Ferriter knows that and is essentially saying, Sinn Féin, and he does say this actually, they would need to lay out more precisely, or people would need to know more precisely the language and the objectives and the shape of any
Yeah.
reunited.
But Jude, as you rightly point out, two things. Number one, the person who writes the article rarely writes ahead. In fact, I'm 98% certain Ferreter didn't write the headline.
Mm.
Secondly, if you read the article, the headline does not actually reflect what Ferreter said.
Aye,
It's
aye.
a sort of interpretation of the extreme of what he said. He didn't. He said other people in civic society in the Republic are focused on other things. Actually, so they are. But
Mm.
hey, Jude, the whole debate hasn't started. And as you pointed out 2 minutes ago, during the election campaign, Mary Lou McDonald rarely mentioned unity or the Irish, the whole thing, because Jude, right now, it's neither the time nor the place. Sinn Féin do not have a major policy document ready to roll. They're not focused on it. They were concentrating on the last election. Jude, there's a whole lot of other things have to come into play. I think the whole thing too about a civic forum and all that sort of stuff. Jude, if they publish a complete roadmap with say 10 key points and
Mm.
saying we want academics, the politicians, etc., and we are launching now a major campaign, and it's going to be a key plank of our next election about Irish unity. Let's see the debate then.
Listen, Pat, do you think, I mean, Mary Lou now has said, and several other people have said, that 2030 would be the date for a border poll. Do you think that's likely?
Well, I do. I really do, Jude.
Well, you know,
Sinn Féin has got to get its act together. Even Leo Varadkar said it should stop being an aspiration and should be sort of a factual thing.
strategy.
Let's have
Mm,
the border poll and let's get it out there.
mm. You think it's likely to happen, though? That's what I'm saying. You might see.
Yeah, Jude, if Sinn Féin, Jude, they should stop. I know they have sort of background documents and discussion documents,
Mm.
but they should go publicly with a massive take it upon themselves to send it to everybody, every household in the country, and saying, oh, we're looking for this to become now a central plank of the next administration, next government. That Irish unity is now, something that needs discussed. The demographics in the north are changing. The situation is changing. Brexit has changed. Let's let's see let's see democracy at work. Let's see what the people want.
Would there be any danger of the electorate in the south saying, I don't want to hear about that. What I want is Sinn Féin to bring out 10 points about how I can pay my rent or how I can go in a house.
That could well be an issue, and there'll be a lot of the old West Brits types. We don't need to stir the pot of
Yeah,
sectarianism one
yeah,
more
yeah,
time. You're going to
yeah.
get that, Jude. That's a certainty.
So, well, I'm just saying that there's a danger. Would there be a danger that Sinn Féin would lose voters if it, in fact, or supporters, if it, in fact, focused in a big headline way on Irish unity?
Well, and then Jude, what's the raison d'être of Sinn Féin?
Mm.
Surely they're the party of Irish unity. That is their core principle. If
Yeah,
they're going
yeah.
to sort of play like right, Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael centre right. The Labour Party centre, well, not even sure if centre left anymore. But
Yeah.
anyway, Sinn Féin, Irish unity is their raison d'être. So if they're going to have any sort of principle, Jude, they should make it. But Jude, the late Tommy Gorman, RT's Tommy, I remember years ago chatting. Tommy says, scratch out every Irish person, there's a wee Republican underneath. And I
Mhm.
think that's true. The only thing is, there's a lot over the I keep saying this, Jude. Partition failed in the north and succeeded in the south.
No, you're right. You're right, Pat. But all the forces of the media, of course, were swung into place behind the idea of saying that place is up there and let it stay up there.
Yeah,
Actually, it'd be very interesting to see because there's a suggestion in Dermot Ferriter's article that politicians should react to how people are feeling. I think that's true, or what's on people's minds, the voters' mind. But it's also true, I think, that good politicians should be able to lead. should be able to point
Yeah,
out things to people that they maybe hadn't thought about, should be able to suggest certain routes that never crossed people's minds. So that
yeah,
idea of the politician being a kind of a puppet who reacts whenever the public
yeah,
have something on their mind, the good politician, I don't buy that. I think a really good politician is someone who stirs up people or reminds them of what's important. For example, I would see a good politician in the States as pointing out how much money is being funneled into weaponry for Israel. That would be the job of
yeah,
a good politician. It
yeah.
might not be on the minds of most people in the US, but I mean, you sometimes have to have in a sense, take a stand or put out information or emphasize points that you believe are important, even at present
Yeah.
they are not important to most people.
Jude, up, this sounds a bit arrogant, but when I became editor of Dairy Journal, I was young and had fire in my belly. And
Mm.
I thought the Dairy Journal back then was a sort of reactionary. I'd reacted to what the people were saying.
Mm, mm,
This is not very exciting, or it's not. Still up at this idea, not only should we reflect public opinion, but we should sort of maybe shape it and lead it. No, hey, wait a minute, this is happening here. What's your view on this?
mm.
Rather than sort of, oh, they've got a view, let's us reflect it. So
Aye.
I remember we used to, Sinn Féin, for instance, at that stage, weren't really taking much part in a lot of politics. But I remember one time somebody told me, look, see tomorrow morning in places like Galia and the Bogside, they would get 33, 34%.
Yeah.
At that stage, John Hume and the SDLP were all powerful. You never heard of Sinn Féin as pop. So I started doing asking questions like, why is the growth of Sinn Féin? And I remember being accused, oh, you're nothing but a Republican, and so on. You're undermining Hume and all the rest of it.
Mm,
I was thinking to myself, if there's 70 and 80% unemployment in places like Galia and the Bogside, why are people saying Hume doesn't speak for me, and
mm.
so on? But I remember, Jude, people sometimes don't like you doing things like that. But that's the whole reason to do it.
That's
Jude,
I couldn't agree
you
more.
know,
Yeah, I'm
uh,
with you completely, Pat.
uh,
The job I think of the media is to reflect what's happening, but
mm,
also as the newspaper in which Dermot Ferriter is writing today, or any newspaper, Irish News, Newsletter, whatever, they all have an editorial where the
yeah,
newspaper tells people what they think of some particular issue. So there's no
yeah,
hesitation in doing that. And yet they
yeah,
would, point to the likes of Sinn Féin as being out of touch with what people really want, whereas they, on the other hand, are trying to channel people a certain direction. Okay, Pat, we've sort of jumped around the place, but I think all of those things are terribly important. And
mm,
I'd like a bit more feedback from people. We're getting
mm,
some, but I'd like more. I'd like people to
yeah.
ask more questions of us or ask us what things or tell us what things they think we should discuss. That doesn't mean we'll do it, but it'd be good if they would, I
At
think.
least we have an idea what they want. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. What was the other thing I was going to say? Oh, yeah, just before we stop, Conor Murphy is going to go to
Mm.
the Shannon from Stormont. 10 seconds. Good idea, bad idea.
I think for Conor Murphy after his health problems, maybe a good idea.
Had he got health problems?
Yeah, apparently, I'm not going to say him publicly, but I think he has. Yeah,
Oh, right. Well, that's
yeah,
fair
yeah,
enough. That's fair enough.
yeah.
There's an article by Newton Emerson in today's Irish
Mm.
Times where he's very dismissive and says it's all wrong and that Murphy should be up and doing this, that, and the other in Stormont rather than that. Okay, well, about three.
Murphy's a very talented fella. By the way, Dr. Collins, a
Yep.
book.
I was just going to show
This
mine. Hold yours up. Let's see
that's
what it is,
that
Pat.
that's that there is it's about a Mexican family in America, and they go back to Mexico. Carmelo,
Carmelo, and who's it by?
by a woman called Sandra Cisneros.
And have you been
The
reading? It sounds awfully
enchanting,
hard, Pat.
soulful, and sophisticated. What?
What sounds awful hard? What's it about?
Each year, three raised families drive from Chicago via Route 66 to Mexico City. It's about their lives and about Mexican lives. Now, it's exuberant and it's all around. It's not the easiest book in the world to read, but
Uh,
some parts of it are very good.
yeah, yeah. Okay, here's mine. And you must
Oh, I
recognize
read
it.
that years ago. Brian Moore.
Brian Moore, the right man.
The
Brian Moore, not Brian Moore. He pronounced his
Brian.
name one of his extended family told me years ago, as the Irish I,
Brian
Brian.
Moore,
But anyway, Brian
The
Moore.
Lonely Passion of Judith Hearn.
That was one of the first. That's the first book by him that I ever read. It's actually also the book they've chosen in the Belfast Central Library for their classic
uh,
book of the month
uh,
in a month's time. I think this book is one of the most heart-wrenching, true-to-life books
yeah,
I've ever
yeah.
read.
I read it
Absolutely.
years ago, Jude.
I
There was
remember.
one. There was one that struck a chord with me. There was a character in one of the books, and there was an old reporter and a paper, and a man got talking to him, and he'd been working in the paper for years. The man was originally from Donegal. It was, I thought, geez, that could be me.
He mentions in the course of this book, there's a professor who works at Queen's, whose
Yeah,
family is sort of nice to poor Judith Hearn, but it mentions the fact that she's a Donegal woman and how
yeah,
she's regarded with some degree of suspicion that she, from Donegal, should come and get her claws into and marry this high-flying professor.
uh,
You know that would you agree that that's a factor in some Belfast thinking?
absolutely. Any southerner, what are you doing up here?
Uh,
Absolutely.
it's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. People who would regard themselves, I suppose, as being nationalists. So that's what I would advise people to have a read of. The Lonely Passion of Judith Hearn by Brian Moore. And yours is once again, Pat.
Mellow by Sandra Cicernos. By
Okay.
the way, I finished reading one about, I'm going around international, a Norwegian. I think it was the 13 Trees of the Psalm by a Norwegian guy. It's actually quite an interesting book.
Pat, you're so sophisticated. I remember
No, I'm just bored.
one time Danny Morrison in an article said he was interested in European literature. And his wife rolled her eyes and said, "Oh, for God's sake, I'm interested in European literature."
No, 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 I'm interested in stories. It's not literary. Jesus, Jude, I could be. Read a book the other day. The girls who disappeared. It's got nothing to do with literature.
Okay, Pat, good
All the
talking to you
best, Jude.
again.
And you,
In the year, I was going to say 1925,
25. It's
2025. I'm only one
25.
century out of touch. Okay, look
Okay,
after
Jude.
yourself, my boy. We'll
Look
see you
after
next,
yourself.
what day is today? Friday?
This is Friday. See you Monday.
See you Monday. See you Monday, Pat. Okay, thanks
Bye,
very much.
Jude. Good
All
luck.
the best. Oof.
How long have we left?
Uh, we're not quite finished, Pat. Our viewer will have to put up with us for a second
Our
longer.
viewer will have to put